good to go? Well, I was going to start with a good funny joke, but we used that one up already, and so we'll just have to get down to business. And
Let's get down to business. Yes, sir.
thank you for coming. Thank you for letting me take up some of your time and have a chat.
You know, Chris, this is, I've seen previous ones that you've done, and they're all top notch, and so I was actually honored to be here.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much. So tell us, let's start with what is Forté, and what do you do?
Well, Forte is a French word that means one strengths.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll just go back to 1978, 1975 and kind of give you that idea.
Perfect.
But I've been a people watcher literally all my life. I was a radio news guy, sportscaster when I was like 16,
Mm-hmm.
local radio station. Would then be hired away from there by the CBS affiliate in Joplin, Missouri, and where I did news, anchored, because I had a pilot's license and some knowledge of the weather, I also was the weatherman occasionally. And so at the end of the day, moved into sales and into management. And at that point, just being out there and, you know, commercials or whatever, because you're communicating to a 60-mile radius, I knew there was more than just TV. So I would leave the station and form an entity, a marketing research firm, because that's a lot of what my skill set is marketing research, statistics, psychology, and business. I changed my major about 7 times in college. When I graduated, the president and my parents were standing at the end of the line. They were so glad to see it finally happen. But I really and truly began to realize we could run beautiful ads. Now, Morgan Associates had an office in Kansas City, as well as Joplin, Missouri, and Fayetteville, Arkansas. And so that gives you a lot of feedback when you're out there doing stuff. And I began to understand, okay, the missing piece here is the people at the client. They being informed, they communicate, et cetera, et cetera. And in the Kansas City office, we were taking care of the GMC truck division out of Kansas City, so it's a big region of the Midwest. And I was asked to go out and find an assessment that would help them when they're hiring the service manager and the salespeople. Those are the revenue generators. And so who I reported to there his name was Bob Otto, and he says, Hoop, we know your background. Go out and see what you can find out, because what we're using is not working. So I started on that journey, and what I would learn in 1947, this is when the federal government said we're going to start profiling government workers and military personnel. And that just sent out a plethora of assessments, but they typically were someone's master's thesis or doctoral thesis, sample size 20 students.
Right.
You can't project.
It's not a big enough population.
No, particularly they're not so much a consumer at that age, if you will. But so I had to go back to Bob, say, Bob, I couldn't find anything, but you know, part of my education was computer science, and I could write code in virtual COBOL. So I said, Bob, I couldn't find anything, but I can build one for you.
Oh
you know,
gosh.
You're young and innocent, so you're invincible.
How old were you at this point?
Oh my gosh, I must have early 30s.
Okay.
Early 30s. So there's a lot right there. And so he said, fine, Hoop, you've been taking a long time doing this, because I tend to be thorough. And he says, how long that's going to take you? And I said, I'll get it done in 90 days. So I was going to go pound out the code and all that stuff. Well, 3 years later, we're now to 1981, okay? And it was ready to go to market. We'd validated it. It had all that. If anyone ever wanted to, well, let's put it this way. If anyone listening ever has insomnia problems, let me know. We'll send you the Forte monograph, the science behind Forte. It'll put you to sleep pretty quick. But the key there was, that's when the IBM PC came out.
Mm-hmm.
So we took the virtual COBOL into that platform, and in the early days, we even sold the hardware with the software. Bad idea.
Bad idea.
Yeah, because this is when people are just learning how to connect a computer and a printer.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the devices we had it's called a dongle.
Yeah.
And it goes between the computer and the printer cable.
Yeah.
And that protects your intellectual property,
Gotcha.
which is a big deal.
Yeah.
And it's paid off for us over the years. And so the whole idea with Forté was, what are your strengths?
Mm-hmm.
Because the assessments back then, it was all focused on the healthcare model of here's what's wrong with you.
Right.
And so who wants to hear that? Who wants to hear that?
Yeah.
Not many people want to hear that. And so the focus was not so much personality, but that plays a role, certainly. But the who you are, how you're currently adapting, and more importantly, how you're being perceived. And so we talk a lot about AI today and generative AI. Well, Forté's been using AI since the very beginning. The predictive analytics is what takes a look at who you are and how you're currently adapting.
Mm-hmm.
Then the prescriptive analytics is on page 9. Do these things for the next 30 days to get your message across sooner. We don't have a single client globally that doesn't expect at least 13 months productivity in a 12-month period.
Right.
It's a business tool.
Yeah.
You and I have we communicate and we start getting there, and rank, title, whatever. I mean, it doesn't really matter anymore. It is skill set and how we communicate and how we optimize our respective skill sets to then accomplish the common goal. So more people get successful, and that happens.
Right.
And so that's really what got me into it. And the other thing too was all these, they're once and done. So what?
Mm-hmm.
So what took me the time was to build how they're currently adapting to a specific environment. Our default is others at work. It could be spouse at home, it could be boss at work, peers, direct reports, whatever.
Yeah.
And a lot of your really high potentials, they're really good at managing their boss, but not so much their peers and their direct reports. So this is able to round them out to then advance not only as a high performer, but a high relationship performer. Because the more people you can get going in the same direction, guess what? It gets done sooner.
Absolutely.
And typically better, because nobody has everything that's needed to really, run that mile, if you will.
Yeah.
So that's really what it started. It just started as a simple question from GMC Truck Division in Kansas City, Missouri. But I was, it's just a lot of things line up in life, and I just happened to be in that unique place where I could help my client, most importantly, help the people be more successful.
And you had the entrepreneurial mindset to say, hey, there's nothing out there that's checking the boxes. Why not try and create something?
Well, that's it. And I mean, even that chance to I had so much input. And that's the key too, is you get a large enough contribution to your thinking from many other people, you begin to see things, and it was clearly an opportunity. I mean, it was like a bird's nest on the ground.
Yeah.
How are we going to make it work from a strengths basis? And that's how you do it. So we were really the first strengths-based assessment on the planet. And go along, and I mean, we even had clients in Ireland. We just shipped the software, the dongle, and we provided a certification course for them to go through. But then when the internet opened up in '96, we were already computerized.
Yeah.
So we used a program called Cold Fusion to link our software, and we're online, and then it just kind of exploded. So we have an office in Dublin, Ireland, and also now Southeast Asia and Asia Pacific, and then a Korean translation in South Korea. So it was interesting during COVID. We could kind of see that ripple starting over there, because that's really where whatever it was and however it got started, that's kind of where it began.
Yeah.
And then during COVID, Forté was able to provide leadership with the adapting updates. What you can do, a Forté adapting update as often as every 30 days. New pages 7, 8, and 9, and then trending on pages 12 and 13.
Mm-hmm.
So we see what the gaps are over time, and we can coach to that, to how to close those gaps.
Absolutely.
And that's what we do, and that's every time you get an adapting update, you get those new pages. The best model to follow there is an adapting update every 30 days for the first 90 days.
Okay.
Because then we can establish a trend.
Right, exactly.
After the first one, we got a line, then we got 2 lines, but third, now we got a trend.
Yeah.
And we also measure, and this took some time, to a person's current logic style in that environment.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, it could be anything from facts to intuitive feelings, for example. I'm working with a teammate, facts-oriented. Guess what I'm going to do? I'm going to get them the facts as I know them, and they're more receptive. They'll double check it, and they should.
Mm-hmm.
But all the way to intuitive feelings, maybe there's not an answer. Maybe we got to go create that together. Mm-hmm. Current stamina level, current logic style, goals index. You correlate the current stamina and the goals index, then you measure resiliency. And resiliency's a huge deal. Over the last several years, it's getting even more important now.
Absolutely.
Particularly as Gen Z comes in. We have a document that anyone who's viewing can go to our site and get on how to best collaborate among the generations. And it's flying off the shelf, if you will.
Yeah.
But particularly the Gen Zs, who are tremendously talented. They've got the technology. They grew up with the technology.
Mm-hmm.
They've got good ways to use that, sometimes best ways to use that. But the idea is it's always going to start with a conversation, not a text, not a whatever you can look up there, but it's going to be a genuine conversation on how to best adapt. Mm-hmm. And we're based here at the University of North Carolina in Wilmington, and so I have the opportunity to then present Forté to the generation coming in.
Absolutely.
And just recently with a group of seniors, and I like to think I can tell a good story and get a laugh and that kind of stuff. Well, when I made the presentation, this is like the 50, mm-hmm. and this is Cameron School of Business, and I'm making the presentation. Maybe I got one smile.
That's it?
That's it, man.
No way, I can't believe that.
No, it's true. And so, you know how to read the room after a while.
Yeah.
Thinking, okay, well, this is a learning experience. And so I thought, maybe it's the deck, maybe it's me, maybe who knows what. But out of that 50, they break into work groups. Mm-hmm. And so we knew what the work groups were. So we have a team pulse report. Mm-hmm. And so we shared that with them. But then we shared the Forté interaction reports, how to best adapt and communicate with each other.
Yeah.
The professor said he couldn't shut them up the next day. Because they had it right there in writing. Here's how to best adapt to each other, right, as well as how the team prefers to adapt. Mm-hmm. And we do that with our Leadership Wilmington work. We do that with Wilma Leadership Program. Mm-hmm. We do that with all of our clients, but particularly once we have the key on how to do that, and it becomes ingrained, and then we're adapting over time as goals are accomplished or not, mm-hmm. we're able to course correct. So many times, particularly when we're not achieving goals, we simply go back to who we are, mm-hmm. not adapting to the environment, in fact, maybe being a little defensive, that kind of stuff. So again, this gives them the pathway. Page 9 of the report, so many times people just pull that page, put it right there, next to their keypad or whatever it's going to be, and they make sure they weave that into their messages. Yeah. Because now they're getting what they need sooner. And when you have a team that's doing that, And then even in the team sessions, many times they will take page 9, each one of them has that individual copy, and they will read the paragraph and say, this is what it means to me. By the time the whole team has done it, more than likely there's several team members that have got the answer to what that person needed, but they didn't know.
So going back a little bit and just to summarize for people that don't really, don't know what Forté is, it's a software that you've developed that provides an assessment for people on their strengths, and ultimately the goal is to help people figure out how to communicate better.
Yes.
Is that right?
Yes.
All right, got it.
You got it. Thank you for the summary. I appreciate it.
And I mean, with all the businesses I've been involved in, when there's an issue, I like to do what's called a root cause analysis,
Yes.
right? I know you're sure of that, and I've talked about this with some other folks before, but typically one of the root causes of any issue, any problem in business or in life typically comes down to we could have communicated better.
That's right.
In every instance I've ever seen, every problem.
Yes.
So, so from taking this, you have a client that's a GMC truck in Missouri, trying to figure out how we can hire and create the best team. You run with that, create a software way ahead of your time, in my opinion. I mean, you're writing code and developing a software, and that code in which you did, has it changed at all over the 50 years that you've been using it?
We started from the very beginning. Now the monograph is very proper, very buttoned up, but anytime someone does their Forté, the next day they get an email from us, please rate the accuracy of your report.
Right.
And any comments you'd like to make. And so our Forté is current as of this morning. In terms of, we listened, yes, we have made modifications. It can be one word. I was at a trade center show in Chicago, and this lady came up, and I mean, we had 3 or 4 people in depth because we're running the profiles live.
Right.
Because it only takes like 2-3 minutes to do the survey.
Yeah.
So you can't tell me you haven't got time to do it.
I know.
This is not going to take you 2 hours and all kinds of, forced answers, and that's not how it works.
Yeah.
It's based on lexical theory. And so she comes up and she says, I need to talk to you, Mr. Morgan, about this report. It's just not right.
Okay.
And there's probably 150 people literally around our booth, because we had a big booth and a bunch of printers and computers. I said, fine, well, why don't you come over here? And she wasn't even going to do that. She says, right here, it says I'm exciting. And she says, I am not exciting, which I bought into immediately. So I literally marked through exciting. And I said, okay, what's next? She says, nothing. That was it. So it'd be one word. It could be one word. And that taught me a big lesson, the sensitivity piece of, because those descriptors that are there, they're based on Galton's work that he and his cousin Charles Darwin worked on in the late 1880s, that certain words point to certain preferences. I mean, it makes total sense. And they came up with over 1,000 of them. They're probably sitting in some pub in London coming up with this stuff.
Yeah.
And I got it down to 60, 30 for the benchmark, and then 30 descriptors for the current adapting. And then it started to make sense because 2 things: ease of use, and if you have a longer survey, people will tend to just check stuff.
Yeah, you get to a point where it's like, all right, like get to the end. Because I've done the Forté, and I swear, I did it in 3 minutes.
Yeah.
And the results I got, I was like, oh my gosh, this is, how did the output, how is it so accurate?
Well, my strength is conformity. I'm a detailed guy, like it done right, et cetera, et cetera. I'm also a 15 impatient. So write fast, or fast right. I don't, care how we get there. Yeah. But I'm also a dominant ambivert introvert, dominant extrovert ambivert. And we also measure ambiversion, which is where you can move easily between extroversion and introversion.
Okay.
Sometimes we ambiverts can be referred to as being a little moody, which was good for me to know because I'd heard it before, but I didn't know why. So we begin to help so many people understand, okay, here's the who you are, but how you're adapting can be to the environment we're talking about can be very different. And sometimes it gets the job done. What we want to do is match up the current, adapting, and the perceiver profiles.
Okay.
Not so much all three of them,
Okay.
because short of lobotomy or some LSD, you are who you are. I mean, otherwise you can imagine our lives would be like the movie Groundhog Day, where Bill Murray's waking up a different person. You know,
Yeah.
you make a commitment like marriage or something, and you don't know who you married because it's going to be different tomorrow. That's not a stable
Yeah.
scenario. So, but that's a lot of what went into it was really got to get it right, but it's got to be fast.
You mentioned lexical theory. What is that? I don't know what that means.
Lexical theory is literally the meaning of words.
Okay.
You know, and when someone hears a word, what does it say to them?
How does it make them feel, or what does it make them think?
It will, like, say someone who's non-dominant
Okay.
versus someone who's dominant.
Right.
Okay, different words are going to reveal that where I'm most comfortable. Now, I don't want to get into too much boring stuff, but it's called cluster analysis.
Okay.
So when you get sets of words that you pull together, that's also an indicator. So it's just not a single word, but it's a multiple grouping that will tell you, because they're ranking each word on a 1 to 5 basis. And so it really doesn't, in many cases, mean they don't need to know the word. They're just going to rate it lower because they don't, but that's also a pointer. The words they know and they're more comfortable with, they get rated higher. So it's just how you kind of look at how you're going to crunch the data, but make it easy. Got to be easy, and most importantly, it's got to be accurate because you're giving someone knowledge about themselves that they may or may not have had, but it sure needs to be right.
Yeah,
Or
absolutely.
you don't have a credibility offering.
So I've heard in this conversation in a short period of time, I'm taking away, you have experience with software engineering, you've experience with statistics, you have experience with language, psychology, and business. So were those like the 5 different majors that you started to and then didn't finish? Or it's such an incredible like sandwich of so many different data points.
Well, I mean, that's why you're a good listener, because that's 5. That's
I think it's
what
5,
it was.
right?
But I also had the opportunity I paid to be a people watcher. So that's really what a news person is. You've got to take your own biases out,
Right.
because we all have them, and just report the story as it is, which I sure wish they did more of that in the local media is now. I mean, local, but just media.
Any media.
Yeah, I mean, my mother was one of the first female graduates of the University of Missouri School of Journalism.
Okay.
So you got some of that in there too.
Absolutely.
And my father was a wholesale lumber distributor, a businessman. So, but I'll take you back even a little bit further. I tend to be a pretty active guy. And so my mother came up with a way that maybe she could keep me focused as I was growing up. So when I was 11, she created, and we both created, Hoop Scoops. And this was the local newspaper, the Carthage Press, Carthage, Missouri. They gave us space for one column a week. And I would go around and we would collect, I had reporters at all the elementary schools and the junior high and the high school. So those reporters would put together stories, and then my mom and I'd go around, she'd drive, and I'd go in and collect them, had a Hoop Scoops box for them. And then she, of course, was the senior editor.
Yeah, of course.
And, but but that's really maybe the seed that got it started in terms of, because then I would get into the new stuff and all of that. But Hoop Scoops, in fact, I've even thought about resurrecting that.
Oh my gosh, you should.
You think so?
I think that would be an amazing piece to do.
Well, because, you know, I can put it right there on social media.
Exactly. I know that. I think that would be an awesome piece. And I mean, you have so much experience, so much wisdom, so much just life that, you know, and you've got this, I think you've got a pretty well established image, and people would love to read that. I know I would.
Okay. All right.
There we go.
It's on tape.
Hoop Scoops.
Yeah.
It's coming back.
All right. Well, I mean, we had this little logo and everything in it, and I do have some of the columns that my mother saved.
Yeah.
So I think I'll.
Do you do, I forget, do you do the insights on the Biz Journal? Do you write
I
these?
have done those, yes.
Because, I mean, that could be like a pretty good medium to get some Hoop Scoops out as well.
Well, you know, the Journal is one of our clients, and they've got some folks there to be very helpful. Okay, Chris, okay, here it is. I'm doing it.
Hoop Scoops, I love it. So I definitely wanted to make sure that I asked you how you got the nickname Hoop, and it sounds like it. You know, your mother called you Hoop. So what's the story of why people call you Hoop?
Well, I was cut from the 7th grade basketball team. Let's just start with that. And it wasn't pretty. I'm not even sure I could dribble. But my father's father died when he was like 9 years old. And so to help support his mother and his sister, even at that age, he went around and he found some odd jobs. One of which was helping the elderly start their Model T Fords, because you got to crank them back then.
Yes.
So it went whoop, 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 so they called him Little Hoop. So I'm actually Claude D'val Morgan the third, and I'm Hoop the second. Because my father he's Hoop the first.
Oh my
And
gosh.
Oldest son is the fourth, but we call him Sam. There were too many hoops running around there, so, but that's how because I say go to a client that we've never met face to face, and they're expecting this 8-foot guy to come through the door, and then comes this shrimp. And I get to tell this story
In a
lot.
green jacket.
In a green jacket. My father had a green jacket, and when I was blessed with, you know, McGraw-Hill calling me up and saying, who's been a client for 25 years, saying, we want to write a book with you. There was no book proposal. There was no nothing. It was just they sent an agreement and an advance.
Yeah, out of nowhere, right? They said they contacted you and said, Hoop, we'd like you to write a book.
Yeah.
McGraw-Hill, which is a very big, well-known publisher.
Well, we'd been doing work for them like 20 years.
Okay.
Most of our clients stay with us a
Got
long
it.
time.
Got it. Okay, got it.
And so the CEO and his team were meeting, and this is during COVID, and he said they've been doing their Fortés, adapting updates, and he apparently looked up at senior editor and said, hey, get hold of this Hoop Morgan guy, we're going to do a book.
That's so cool.
So I get the call, and I'm thinking, who is this?
Yeah, is this a prank call or something?
It's a prank call. Somebody's getting paid to do this. Well, it ended up I got paid to do it. So, but I had a great team that helped get this done, because you're dusting off 45 years, and it's totally intended, in this case, sincerely, to help someone get self-awareness.
Yep.
We get the self-awareness right, and it gets better real fast.
Absolutely.
Then I can make a legitimate assessment of a situation. So I get self-awareness, situational awareness, and then the perceiver profile gives you strategy. Here's how you go get it done sooner.
Yep.
But yeah, that obviously I was honored and flattered. And if anyone asks you to write a book, set aside 1.5 years, because it's not a casual. I mean, 56,000 words, and
Yeah.
but interestingly enough, McGraw-Hill took it through like 6 different editors.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you had the executive editor, then you got these other editors that look for particular things. The last editor, her job was to find any potential typo in 56,000 words.
Jeez.
And she did it. She found one E end of a word that had an underline under it. It had missed everybody else, and she found it.
Unbelievable.
Isn't it? So it's an undertaking. Frankly, not only did I remember a lot, but I learned a lot
Mm-hmm.
in terms of how we've kind of progressed and continued to make things better,
Yeah.
which is a lot of who I am, and I'm far from perfect. But you keep getting bits and pieces, and sooner or later it comes together.
So when they approached you, did they give you kind of like the generic idea, like, hey, we want you to write a book about, communication of some type, that's your specialty? Or were they just like, hey, you're a really interesting dude, write whatever you want?
Well, they didn't say that, but they did know. I mean, they experienced Forte and across the entire McGraw-Hill organization.
Yeah.
So, and they full well knew, they're in the education business,
Mm-hmm.
and they full well knew this was going to be a big thing coming out of COVID,
Yep.
because the Gen Zs did not have the benefit of the socialization that all generations prior had.
Mm-hmm.
And if you don't have the interactivity with people, after a while you just stop adapting.
Yep.
And then at the same time, we got this thing called the iPhone, or whatever your device
Yeah,
is.
smartphone, insert brand name.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so everyone's walking around like this. Because we'll walk across the campus every once in a while to go to different classrooms to present.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know how it works, but they're looking down at this, but they're not running into each other. So there may be a special 6th or 7th sense
Yeah.
that they have to avoid that. But once you get a relationship going. Gen Z is a very bright generation.
Mm-hmm.
They've got skills that we need, and before long they're going to be 30% of the workforce, and then it only gets bigger.
Oh my gosh. Technology's great, and there's so many great things that come from it. But what I would love to hear is, you have lived through a period where you've seen us go from zero technology to whole, artificial intelligence, and computers like running the world. I mean, you've got such a different perspective on what life used to be like before, technology. And I don't know, I'd just like to hear you, talk a little bit about that, because for me, I was born a little bit before, but yeah, tell me what that's like, seeing this evolution of technology.
Well, I've looked at it always from the standpoint of how does it make us more efficient? Because
Mm-hmm.
even with all AI does, it's not going to catch up with the human mind. It's a good prompt.
Mm-hmm.
It's a good helper.
Mm-hmm.
I use ChatGPT on several things, just if nothing else to see if my thoughts are any level of validity, because it's all out there.
Yeah.
But it's not going to be the end all. The end all ultimately is how the human mind makes AI better,
Mm-hmm.
not vice versa.
Mm-hmm.
And even with IBM creating Watson to play chess,
Yeah.
stuff like that, the AI is no better than what it's been taught.
Mm-hmm.
It's no better than that. So we're
That's
the
right.
teachers.
That's right.
It basically is a collection box
Mm-hmm.
that then has the ability to sort, condense, that kind of thing. Yeah, the first touch that we really had back in the day was the display writer. I think that's what IBM called it, but that was, you had a big tube there,
Mm-hmm.
and it replaced the typewriter because it was electronic.
Mm-hmm.
And dot matrix printers,
Mm-hmm.
not pretty. And then it got into, the IBM PC, which I talked about. Now the IBM Series 1, the computer, I mean, the discs were like 10-inch discs. I mean, and we got to the PC, and oh my God, it's just a 5.25-inch disc.
Yeah.
But there was two of them, and the first memory we had was like 10 megabytes on the hard drive of the PC.
And that's like one picture on your iPhone today, right?
Yes.
Not even.
No, and just wait till you get into video. And
Yeah.
But so it's just continued. The good news is, for the most part, there's been competition, which makes it better. IBM really, in many ways, kind of led the way. But you had now Samsung and all these larger tech companies. We're on the AWS platform. They now call them instances. They have an instance somewhere. It's actually an instance is a server. Okay, let's just get that right. And
Yeah, I wouldn't have known that.
well, I was confused initially. Like, an instance? That sounds like a cloud out there or something. But it's a cloud, but a cloud's just a bunch of servers.
Right.
That's it.
Yep.
But the marketing guys got a hold of it and made it really sexy and all that stuff. But for example, in Europe, they have the Data Protection Act. And so you've got to really, take care of your databases and stuff like that, which we've done from the very beginning. The last thing we'd ever want to see is something like a data breach or whatever.
Right.
But Ireland is thinking about, we're going to put a data fence around the country, so all of their countrymen's data stays inside that fence. So we were with IBM and their server farms down in Dallas, but when this came about, they didn't have one in Ireland. They had one in London. So that's when we went to AWS for several reasons. The security is significantly better.
Yep.
But they have instances all around the world. So if we needed to, we can put a data collection anywhere in the world and still, process it wherever. But that's how much it's advanced from that 10-inch floppy to the servers located around the world that talk to each other at light speed. When we were first getting Forté ready to go, and we had to work on the software. We would download it to Boca Raton, Florida, on a 300 baud modem, and it had to be hardwired, and it was expensive. I mean, it was a long distance phone call, basically. And in the beginning, we didn't quite know how to compress the data properly, because less going down the pipe, the more economical it would be. And then, of course, then we got into the PC and where we could store it locally and things like that. But just the speed now of the internet, I'm embarrassed to say that I had a 300 baud modem. It's just not right. But all of it, the technology's there, and really how you got to take advantage of it. But we've used AI from the very beginning. It's called SPSS, and statistical processes for the social sciences.
Got it. Okay.
And if anyone wants to copy, they're happy to sell you one.
Yeah.
But that's the main thing is, you want to take advantage of the technology, but you've got your folks who are on the bleeding edge. I don't mind the leading edge, but the bleeding edge is not for Forté. Our development team, it is so thoroughly tested right there and protected. So that's probably the biggest key is make an informed decision on what technology you're going to use, where you're going to put it. I mean, even these massive multinationals, it's on the news, they got breached somehow. And it could have been a 14-year-old sitting on a bed in Florida or Moscow or wherever. So that's why you've got to avoid that bleeding edge or, taking shortcuts we're moving too quickly.
Yeah.
It just makes more sense to make it happen that way.
Well, I like what you said about, using technology as a benefit, but I agree with you. Technology's never, it might replace some level of people involvement, right? Robots can put a car together, but you've still got people that have to oversee the robots, for example, right?
Yes.
And so, just kind of bringing it full circle is, again, just coming back to the importance and, just the opportunity of what Forte does is it's helping you develop your people so that they can evolve and communicate and help you run a successful organization and leverage the technology as opposed to just not changing, not evolving, and not taking advantage of opportunities.
Well, I mean, your point is so well made. I mean, anyone who's watching this can think, hey, is it the same in your life now as it was 2 years ago?
Yeah.
Last year? A couple of months ago?
Yeah.
No, I mean, we evolve over time. And it comes to education, experience, and feedback.
Mm-hmm.
So we're using all this wonderful AI stuff, and it is very highly validated.
Yeah.
But we're still asking the user, what did you think?
Mm-hmm.
Because I'm getting real-time feedback over 40 years, how to evolve, how we have evolved, but it hasn't been AI teaching me that,
Mm-hmm.
or on my teams that. It's been our user who's been the teacher,
Yeah.
the instructor. And I listen to them much more than I do, whatever I'm running through SPSS, because they're out there and they know more than I know about them.
Yep. And, people, it's kind of cheesy to say, but it's just the reality is that, people are an organization's most important assets. I mean, especially in a lot of service businesses. But, and it's hard to measure, effective communication. It's hard to measure qualitative things. I mean, ultimately you could see it in the bottom line, but there's no specific way to measure, is our team, communicating effectively? I mean, I'm sure there are ways, but tell us, what would be like a case study? And you don't have to say the business name or anything, but what would be an example of, an organization that you've worked with where you guys went in, deployed the Forte, and they were just like, wow, we've got increased productivity, hiring the best people. Maybe you could share an anecdote, something like that.
Well, it's really good you asked that question, because we try to correlate Forte data to KPIs of that client.
Okay.
And every client's different.
Mm-hmm.
But let's just go to the sales environment.
Okay.
Working with an entity with over 1,000 salespeople, they're national, all that. Out of the 1,000, there were 92 that were top performers.
Mm-hmm.
Now, this is the good news. It's measured on sales, right?
Yep.
This is hard data.
That's true.
That's hard. And so we get into it and we ask the top performers how your client expects you to act in the close. So we're down to that moment, the moment that's going to make a sale or not.
Right.
And so we have the primary profile of who these folks are, but the most important is how they're adapting in that moment. And so their primary is a dominant extrovert, patient, nonconformist. Basically what that says, self-starter, interested in others, going to work a plan, and then, in this case, overcome objection.
Right, exactly.
Okay? So, but when they're adapting, their dominance drops, getting input, extroversion goes up, so looking outside themselves, impatient, and then conformist. Because this particular company is supplying all of these massive apartment complexes all over the country. So you've got to get that order right, because if that pickup, or that it's not a pickup truck, but the semi shows up and the order's not right, they've lost a week. They've got to send their crew home,
Mm-hmm.
and those folks are going to find another job.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I mean, it's a disaster. And the project manager's sitting there, in some cases, their job's under question. How did that happen?
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, they typically blame first. It's that guy.
Mm-hmm.
Because he's saying, well, how did they do that? You know, so taking that information out to the other 920 sales folks. Now, not everyone adapted it,
Mm-hmm.
but most did. And they increased sales by 12%, and this is a $4 billion corporation.
Holy smokes.
You've got the number already in your head, Mr. CPA. We did not charge enough for that assignment. Not even close. No, I don't think we'd change our pricing model on it. But the bottom line is it changed lives
Mm-hmm.
because the sales guys, you know, of course a salary, but then the commissions, and the company was never happier to pay the commissions because it got that kind of a bump. And the good news is that's the top line,
Yep.
which drives the bottom line.
Absolutely.
Because we weren't adding more people, we're just helping the
being
people
more
who were there.
productive.
Yes, being more
Exactly.
productive. And that's the other thing about our performance coaching module. We have 8 different modules
Okay.
within the Forté system. But that particular is designed to help as much the B and C performer as it is the A performer.
Mm-hmm.
Because usually when people get really successful, they keep doing what they were doing then.
Mm-hmm.
And we have to reinforce it. Keep doing this,
Keep doing
because their tendency would be to step back a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Because I'm now doing it great. Everybody's happy.
Yep.
Well, that's now. That's not coming up.
Well, especially with sales guys, because that's the classic thing. It's like, you know, oh, I busted my quota in the first 6 months of the year. I'm on vacation. I'm doing whatever. I'm checking out. But it's like, no. We got to keep doing this. We got to keep the discipline. Keep doing the right stuff.
Well, for example, we have one entity that very, very bright people. Their KPIs of time to first sale.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, of course, gross sales,
Mm-hmm.
and the third one is sales over time. And so with those 3 criteria, we're learning a lot. Typically, it's just 1 or 2 data points, but these 3, for what they do, the services they provide,
Mm-hmm.
are really important. So they've been thought through, and anytime a client says we want to get performance up, then what level do you want to get to? Number 1, and then
Yep.
who's doing it?
Yep.
Because you can have 2 car dealerships side by side, and the top performing salesperson can be very different here and here. Because you get into culture.
Exactly.
You get into culture, you get into the leadership, and this culture piece has really come forward a lot, because it's not, even in the military,
Mm-hmm.
the work we did with Special Forces at Bragg, they're much more leading by influence now than have a higher rank than you,
Mm-hmm.
because these folks I happen to be honored to be a coach to the Honor Foundation, which we're coaching Marine Special Forces, called Marine Raiders,
Mm-hmm.
as they transition from the military into civilian life.
Yep.
Here's the world's best, the special operator,
Yep.
and very competent in what they do, very smart, but moving into civilian life,
It's completely
it's a
different world.
huge transition.
Yep.
Everything's provided for them here. Nothing's provided for them here. They got to go make it happen,
Mm-hmm.
which most do. But it does take that transition.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the same thing with, we'll learn who transitions the best and how,
Mm-hmm.
and then what we need to do to help those that are maybe struggling a little bit.
Yeah.
And it's no secret there's issues in that environment.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, some of them very life-threatening issues. So, but whether it's sales or transitions or in healthcare, it's your patient satisfaction rating.
Yep.
All those things can be tied back to behavior.
So that was a very nice way of saying, Chris, you're wrong. We can actually measure this really well.
Well, we can take it down to whatever is important to the client.
No, exactly. But that's, you've got me thinking about my business and, how could we implement this and what would be the KPIs that I would use to measure? And I'm like sitting here trying to stay focused on this conversation and not think about what KPIs. But we'll get to that together at some point.
We will.
I look forward to doing that.
Oh no, we definitely will, because you've got a lot of measurables.
Yeah,
and there's no question about it.
So would you say, is there like a certain size of an organization where this becomes more beneficial? Like if I've got a 5-person team, is it less beneficial than I've got, a 50-person organization, or is there any type of benefit for, at scale of using Forté?
Well, the answer is no, because the 5 of you or whomever, you get a larger number than that, but to accomplish the goals, this is a pathway to do that with less wear and tear. And then with consistency and growth and the rewards for accomplishing it and things like that. Our client Cummins Engines, both India as well as here in the States, we've profiled over 9,000 of their engineers, and we know who the top performers are. And that's very much an engineering-based business. Those motors got to also evolve over time. They make them for those huge yachts, as well as on the back of my boat. So in an organization that size, we actually certify folks inside to work with these folks wherever, regions of the country or whatever. And the reason is they're closer to it. I can go in and I can give them, a day's worth or 2 days worth, in some situations every other week, whatever. But the bottom line is we get folks certified within that large organization, then we get feedback from this collective who speak the language, et cetera, and then we can do something about it. We just brought on the Toyota truck division out of Houston, and this is through someone who had been certified at Cummins. And just getting into the process of, okay, what matters, what are the KPIs, things like that. But whether the business knows it or not, or the organization knows it, the nonprofit, whatever it may be, they're there. There are measures there that ultimately represent some level of accountability. They're there. I mean, we're very blessed to be working with the Episcopal Diocese of North Carolina. Their measures are very different.
Absolutely.
Than Hendrick Cars or whatever. I mean, so that's why Forté localizes so easily, because there's people there.
Exactly.
Forté has 38 different master patterns, over 6 million iterations of the profiles. So I mean, that gets into analysis paralysis, to get much beyond that, okay? But it's there, it's real, all that stuff. In education, it's a very different measure. So by any organization, we can look at what behaviors are driving the performance and or which ones aren't. And if it's a really high-performing organization, how do we sustain that? That's going to be the reinforcement, the adapting updates, recognizing trends in the market, because it shifts.
And you've told me this, and it's so sad, and I feel like it's the beginning of a downward spiral for many businesses, is when, during COVID, the example when, revenue, when businesses were tight, sales were drying up, revenues dropping, this and that, the first things that people cut are some of these types of programs.
Right. They do.
And to me, it's like, that's the last thing I would do, is we need to, let's take our dollars and invest in our people so that they can think outside the box, communicate better, and come up with some better ideas about how the hell we could get out of this shithole.
That's right. Yes, sir. We've had many very great years during recessions.
Mm-hmm.
And coming out of COVID, same thing.
Mm-hmm.
It's really amping up, if you will.
Yeah.
Because we do have an answer of how to do even more with either more productivity, less people, whatever.
Right.
And that's what look at what's going on out in corporate America now. You're seeing these layoffs and stuff.
Yep.
Either they weren't needed in the first place, or there's a gap. And it could be very damaging to the company if the momentum is not kept.
Mm-hmm.
Because you can have momentum, good or bad. And so how do we make the good better?
Exactly.
That's what we're looking at. So size of the organization does not matter.
Mm-hmm.
We have the scalability of, if say, the Army came in and said, we want to profile all our soldiers next week. All I need is first name, last name, and email address on a spreadsheet.
Yeah.
Boom, it
That'd be a
goes out.
beautiful sales order, huh?
Yeah, I would have probably flown you down to the island to do this.
Well,
But-
maybe that's not too far off for either one of us, huh?
Well, that's our hope.
Yep.
But we got to make it happen. It's going to come through what we do with others.
Yep.
It's always going to come from there.
Yep. Well, I feel like we're really just kind of scratching the surface on a lot of this stuff, but that's kind of our time for today.
Okay, well, you know what, Chris? I'll come back.
I'll have you anytime.
Yeah.
Thank you
Yeah.
so much for agreeing to do this. I really appreciate it.
It's my honor.
It's been
Thank
a pleasure
you, sir.
speaking with you.
My pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you.